Hello and welcome to Zoom Training, Procedures and Best Practices for Teachers. My name is David Lieberman. I'm the VP of Training and Learning and Development at Learnit, where we are exploring and always bettering our delivery methods for live online training, and Zoom is where it's at. So today we'll walk through the technical aspects of Zoom and the how to use the technical aspects of Zoom so that you can make the most out of your remote trainings and make them engaging and still really strong learning experiences. Please feel free to take notes as you go, and it's highly encouraged to open up your own copy of Zoom and push some buttons and try things as we go and, try it yourself. People don't learn just by watching, which is one of the core tenets of remote training. Now, what's nice is you won't have to memorize any of this. Included with the link that you received should be the opportunity to download a cheat sheet that you can use to prepare yourself before you teach and also to kind of walk through a class introduction. Okay, ready? Here we go. Today I'm going to use my personal one just so I'm not interrupting anybody's class. And you might consider not clicking Keep Me Signed In so you won't have to worry about signing out and signing back in. So Zoom will open itself on up and you'll be prompted to test your microphone and join with computer audio. Right, so you do want to go ahead and test the speaker and microphone. Oh, awesome, I hear a ringtone. Yes. You do want to make sure that you've selected the correct microphone, right? It's pretty easy to select the wrong microphone, especially if your laptop has more than one, right? So be careful with that as you move forward. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and join with computer audio. Now it says I'm using the computer audio, right? If you need to check your audio device, you can check down here at the bottom. These are all the different speakers that I have available to me right now. And up here, these are all the different microphones that I have. I have a fancy Yeti microphone that I'm talking into right now, which is probably why I sound so amazing. Ha! Of course, you can start and stop the audio by clicking mute or unmute or stop video or start video. You do want to make sure that the video is going. For remote courses, you want to have the audio and video going as much as possible. So it's a best practice to just kind of leave it on all the time. Now you're also going to want to open up the Manage Participants window. You'll see yourself there. Sometimes you might show up as a different sort of email or name address, so you might have to come into More and rename yourself. I always add Facilitator to the end of my name. I think it gives me a bit of pop. Now a couple of other things about setup. One, webcam placement is important. You might notice that the webcam is a little bit above my head right now, which makes you look pretty good, actually, defines your jawline and that kind of thing. Look what it looks like when I'm coming from underneath. Right, everybody loves to look up my nose, which is pretty awesome, right? So what you might consider doing is getting the webcam to eye level or a little bit above eye level if possible. Like the selfie angle shot that you end up taking, right? Those kinds of things. Lighting also matters. If you can, what you're going to want to do is have two different lights. So we're talking about one light over here and one light over here. You can see how they both light both sides of my face here. You can also have a light directly in front of you. What you don't want to do is be backlit or don't have any kind of light or strong shadows or things like that at all. It makes it look kind of, yuck. You want to make sure that the background is professional. Right, so that doesn't really needs to be like an office environment or anything super fancy. What you do want to do is avoid having like a kitchen or a bathroom in the background. For some reason, people get yucked out about kitchens and bathrooms. By the way, a dual monitor, or some people have a triple monitor, makes it quite a bit easier to manage all of the different little things that you've got rolling while you're teaching with Zoom. So if that's an option for you, you might heavily consider plugging in another monitor. And if you're thinking about dress code, basically what you want to do is map to the client's culture, right? So if you're teaching to the Gap, you wear Gap-looking things. If you're not super sure, you can just kind of go business casual, which for men generally means something with a collar and buttons, like a polo shirt or really anything like a button-up. And then for women, business casual is so flexible that, just use your best judgment and you're good to go. All right, so hey, take a second. get on your own Zoom account. You can go get a free Zoom account at zoom.us and practice logging on. Make sure you can do it. Make sure the setup stuff works. Make sure audio works, and all that kind of business, and then continue on with our training. All right, so while you're practicing Zoom, the things that we're about to learn, you might consider getting a couple of people in there to help you practice, right? So that you have some sample students. But if you don't have anybody that you can reach out to, you can make fake sample students like I've done here. Notice I've got myself some Jeff and some Cindy, right? So the way you do that is you open up Chrome, and then you're going to need to open up an incognito window, right? Which basically means it's a window that's hidden from Zoom. The easiest way to do that is after you've got Chrome open already, you give it a Control and Shift and N, right? And then you can tell it's incognito because it's got this cool little incognito icon there, which is also pretty just plain neato. So it's both, really. Now what you're going to do is paste in the Zoom URL that you're trying to join with, right? Of course, remember you can go and get your own. And it'll say, cool, do you want to open up Zoom? What you don't do is say open Zoom. Instead, what you do is go, nope, cancel. And it goes, click here to launch Zoom. So you click there, and I tell it to cancel again. And notice now, sneaky little Zoom people, now there's a link to join from the browser. Right, so you can do this as many times as you want in an incognito window so that you have as many fake students joining as possible, right? So that way you can do things like send them chat messages and stick them into breakout rooms, which we're going to do. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and set join from the browser. It says, well, what's your name? I'm going to say Liz is joining me here. What's up, Liz? And give it a join. Now this part's important. What you don't want to do is join video, because then you're going to get this really weird audio feedback loop, right? So don't join video and don't join audio either. You're going to go ahead and just close that bad boy up in the corner there and then minimize the window. Don't close the window because then you'll be exiting the meeting, right? All right, awesome. So I'm going to minimize it out of the way. And now check it out. I've got Jeff and Cindy and Liz. It's almost like the Brady Bunch I've got going on here. All right, take a minute and do that. You can watch the video again. Let's get some fake students going. Make sure you can actually practice the stuff that we're going to play with, and then we'll move along. All right, so if we're going to be successful when we teach remotely, we want to make it as much like a live experience as possible, right? And we do lose a good amount of that. And so if we're going to do that, if we're going to shine, here are the big 4 things that you want to make sure that you pay attention to when you're delivering remote training. And the first one is what you're looking at right now. It's about your camera. Get on camera and also look at the camera, right? Nobody wants to stare at your PowerPoint or Excel page or something like that for any kind of length of time. When you're talking to people, talk to people. Right, so what that means is that you're going to have to get very, very clear with minimizing the share and then bringing the share back up and getting rid of the video and bringing the video back up. And then when we're talking to people, look, when we're kind of messing around with this and I'm talking to you, it doesn't really look like I'm talking to you at all, right? You can totally tell that I'm not really engaged. When we talk to people, we talk to them. And so what that means is training yourself to look directly into the lens of the camera, which, by the way, is totally weird. It's weird, right? It's going to take some getting used to. But the cool thing about it is that we're so used to looking at people when we talk to people that when you get used to looking at the camera, it feels so much more like a real connection, right? So you can really connect with your students by actually looking at them while you're talking, even if you're not really looking at them. You know what I mean? Now, it is hard not to look down at them or look at yourself, especially if you're very vain because you're so good looking, right? And we're just going to have to train ourselves out of it. Even when people are talking, we look at them and look like we're listening. And when we look like we're listening, it means we're looking at them, not looking at their little picture. Making sense? So that's number 1. Get your camera on all the time and talk to it whenever at all possible. Right, so even if you're doing end user or software training, you really do want to minimize that stuff out of the way unless it's necessary for it to be up right at that point. Good, good. So here's the second part. Get them to turn on their camera as well. Nothing builds engagement and accountability like you can see them. You can see them and they can see you, and so people stay there with you. Otherwise, I mean, we know how it is. It's so easy to get distracted. People are all over the place. They're not really listening, all that kind of good business. Normally what you want to do is during the introduction, tell them that you'll be asking them to turn their cameras on. On your welcome slide, there might be a get ready to turn your camera on or turn your microphone on notice. And then when you have people introduce themselves or during some sort of beginning activity, you say, okay, go ahead and turn your camera on, right? So for example, if I were going to have Jeff introduce himself right now, I'd say, Jeff, you're up. Go ahead and turn your camera on and say hello. Right? Notice how I didn't say if you want to or if it's okay with you, that kind of business, right? I'm giving Jeff the least amount of chance to weasel his way out of turning the camera on. Now, of course, he can still lie or maybe not really have a camera or something like that, right? And wow, it's just so much better when we can see people and they can see us. The experience is so much more human, isn't it? Okay, so get your camera on, get their camera on. Those are two of the big four. The third one is you're going to have to really work for engagement. And most of the time what that means is calling on people. Right? Often we're used to saying like, so what do you guys think? Any feedback on that? And then people give feedback. Well, here people don't get those subtle cues when you look around the room and gently lean forward and see and nobody else is doing it like it's my turn to talk, right? So you'll say, hey, what do you guys think? Any questions? And nobody says anything, right? So what you'll find is that calling on people, as long as you're not embarrassing them, you don't call on them for very personal things or for when there's a right or wrong answer, calling on people builds super engagement, right? So if you're talking about something and you say like, hey, I'm wondering what you guys think about that. Like, Jeff, what are your thoughts? If Jeff doesn't have any thoughts, well, then maybe Jeff will consider being here in the workshop with us now, right? So it builds that accountability as well. And you know what? Pretty much Jeff always does have thoughts. You can even do things like, hey, do you guys have any questions? Liz, any questions? Cindy, anybody? You'll be surprised by how much things pop out. Right? So especially if you do adult learning, sometimes we're told, don't ask questions. We don't want to embarrass people. Don't directly call on people. You're going to have to throw that all away. It's not just okay. It makes for a much better experience. Okay. And then the last thing that we're going to do is use the heck out of breakout rooms. If you're not used to breakout rooms, basically what they do is separate students out so that they're in small groups or in pairs and then they talk to each other. Man, the first time you do breakout rooms and people come back all ha 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 ha, like with big smiles on their face, you'll know you're hooked. Like when we put people in a room online to talk to each other, it really does make them engage with each other in a way that doesn't even happen when they're in person. And it's such a satisfying experience. Right? So if you're teaching skills or ideas, you can have people talk about the idea or how they might use it or practice with each other, right? Teaching without practice is hardly teaching at all, right? And if you're teaching some sort of skill, like a software skill or something like that, still get people together to talk about where they might use it, what they find most useful, what they like, what their boss might like them to use, that kind of stuff. Right? That anticipation, the insight about how they'll really use something makes a big difference in what they get from your workshop. And the talking about it makes it real as well and builds that kind of community human feeling that we miss sometimes when we're online. So the big four, two of them are about your camera. Get their camera on and get your camera on. Always look at the camera if you can. You, of course, want to use breakout rooms as much as possible. And get engagement by calling on people. It's okay. Go ahead and give it a shot. All right. If you're going to memorize things, those are the big four. So you might look up in your head and go, what were the big four again? Two of them were about the camera. One of them was about engagement and calling on people, right? And then the last one was about breakout rooms, which of course we'll learn how to use as we move forward. Good? Good. All right, folks, let's dig ourselves into the features of Zoom. And so these are the teacher features, if you will, or the host features. You wiggle your mouse around and the buttons come up down at the bottom. Managing participants is something you will be involved in. If I click it, you'll see it'll point back up on the corner here. Sometimes you can move it around and put it wherever you like, that kind of business. Just so you know, sometimes that thing does close itself or hide itself, so you might end up opening it up more than once. Now, depending how the system is set, people will either come in muted or unmuted. And so the most important thing for you to be able to do is to mute people if it's all noisy in the background. Sometimes you'll hear them complaining, oh, I have to turn on my camera, right? You can mute that too, right? So when you roll over, one of the choices here that you'll normally have popping up is mute. Now on mine, mute isn't there because I've got fake students who have shut off their audio, and generally it will be there. You can imagine a big mute button there. Good, okay. Right. If I go up to more, I can chat directly with somebody or say, hey, start your video or something. And I don't know if you need to do that. That's a little pushy, right? There are a couple of things here that are super useful. One, you can make somebody a co-host. If you leave the meeting, what that means is all of a sudden somebody else gets randomly assigned as the meeting host. Right, so this is a way you can kind of protect for that. And the co-host can also go around doing things like muting people or doing all the same things that you do as a host. This is especially important if you have a really big workshop where you have an assistant who maybe manages chat or that sort of business. Sometimes people pop in as their phone number, right? And so you can rename them. So to give them an actual name, maybe I'll put Cindy's last name on here, Cindy P, if there are two Cindys. By the way, sometimes if you join on the computer and with a phone number, you show up in the participants window as two totally separate people. So if you notice a phone number in there, you might call out, hey, who's a 415-307-81119, which is probably too many numbers for a real number, and then just name it the same as, if it's Cindy's number, name it the same as Cindy. Good. Notice, by the way, down here you can mute everybody or unmute everybody, and there are more things in here, and those are the big ones. Hey, just so you know, normally if you kick somebody out, which you can do, it doesn't let them back in. So make sure that you're not abusing your power, right? All right, let's take a look at sharing the screen, which you might do off and on, depending if you have a slideshow or if you're teaching some piece of technology. Please remember, don't just force people to sit there looking at your slide or your Excel or something like that for a long time. Nobody wants to do that. Let's be with people. When you talk to people, talk to them. And down here, we've got the screen share, right? You'll notice when you click it, it gives you lots and lots of options about, hey, what are we trying to share right now? I see there's a 1 here and then a 1 in this little corner as well. I have a second monitor, and so that's why I'm displaying a 2. So it is asking you, hey, do you want to share the screen, or are you trying to just share one application? This is all the other stuff that I have open. Generally, the best practice is to share the screen, and here's why. If you're sharing a slideshow, back up. So generally, you're going to have to make a choice about sharing the screen or sharing an application. If you're working in an application like Excel, go ahead and share it. If you're sharing a slideshow, you're going to want to share a screen. Because if you share the application, what it does is it shares the PowerPoint, not the actual slideshow. You know what I mean? So it'll show you all the slides with the slide strip and all that and the notes, and not the actual slideshow that might show up on the other monitor. All right, so I'm going to share screen 1 just for the sake of learning and whatnot here. Let's go ahead and hit share. You'll notice that all of a sudden the buttons have moved up to the top. Right? We also have all the little video windows and things like that show up. Sometimes these will disappear depending on how you have things set up, so you might have to go open them again. If you do want to open something, you'll roll up to the top and either hit one of the buttons up here or go to more, and that's where you'll find the things if you're finding that they're missing. All right, of course, if you are working with a PowerPoint, you can go ahead and make sure that the PowerPoint is showing on the correct screen, and go ahead and share that, and then the PowerPoint will be going full screen. Right, this is why it's a lot easier to have 2 monitors here, because if I'm sharing on the other monitor, I can have my PowerPoint show up on that monitor, and then I can still manage the Zoom window and any of my notes and anything like that in the main window, right? To stop share, we roll up and hit stop share. And for real, please, 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 I know I'm making a big deal about it, stop sharing as much as possible, right? You want to show a PowerPoint when you're going through bullet points maybe, or specifically showing something people want to look at. Share an application when you're actually showing people how to do something. And when you're talking to people, talk to them. Now there are some neat things down here. When you click screen share, notice right down at the bottom here, we've got show computer sound and optimize screen for a video clip. So two cool things you can do here. One, you can show video over Zoom, just straight up play video. You can double click a video and show that from your desktop. If you want the sound to be shared, you will have to click the sound share sound thing. You can even show YouTube videos. It's kind of a little weird if people see ads in their class, but it's not the end of the world either. Now here's something else that you can do that is cool. Before the workshop starts, put a slide up on the screen, share it, share sound, and then go to YouTube and play some like smooth jazz or some kind of other cool music in the background. I like to play what they call binaural beats. Check it out, binaural beats. Bi is 2 and neural is, brain, right? What it's supposed to do is sort of map to the flow state of your brain. When you're in the zone, that's what your brain waves look like, is the binaural beat music. And so it's supposed to kind of get your brain to adjust to that type of music. There are studies that show it's kind of pseudoscience, but either way, it's cool, right? So that's a nice little one as well. Practice sharing the screen back and forth and back and forth. It's something that you use quite a lot. Go ahead and press pause now and make that happen. Okay, moving on, as we scooch across this bad boy here, you've got the chat window, yeah? Let's not ignore the chat window, even though we do want most of our communication to happen over voice. Please, please make a great effort to make sure that people communicate with you over voice, over the microphone. That's how people really talk. If you have to constantly be managing the chat window, it's really hard to keep your eye on the camera when you talk to people, right? And then you're like, oh, clickety click click there, I see something there. It's just kind of weird. Get people to talk to you like they do in real life. Now you can use the chat window for all kinds of cool things, right? Basically for interaction. You can say things like, if you're with me, nod your head. Let me see you nod your head. Or if you're with me, put a yes in the chat window. How much would you use this? On a scale of 1 to 10, how awesome do you think this is? Let's take a guess at a statistic. Let's play Price is Right. What person will you first use this tool with? Who will you tell about this when you go home, right? All of these are questions that work great over chat. If you can get everybody to talk all at one time over chat, that really works. And by the way, it also gives you a good opportunity to call people out. If you've got some folks chatting, and you don't see Jeff in there, you're like, how about you, Jeff? What do you think? Right? Get them in there. Like, let's make sure that they know that they're here to participate today. In the chat window, all the way down at the bottom, you can send people, individual chats. What you do have to do is be careful, because check this out. Let's say that I send something to Jeff. Notice that it doesn't set itself back to everybody. And so I've already done this a bunch of times where I think I'm adding something to the chat, and what I'm actually doing is just chatting to Jeff, right? So you do have to come put it back on everyone. Now, one of the really cool things about the chat window is you can also upload files and PDFs and all kinds of groovy stuff in the chat window. So for example, I could come in here and I'm opening up my David stuff folder. Got some cool stuff. Here are some Zoom procedures and best practices. I throw that in there and notice that it uploads. Wow, great. It gave me a little network disconnect. It's probably doing that because I'm recording at the same time. Normally what it does is just kind of upload itself and then people can click it and download. Right? So here are a couple of tips. One, if there's a manual for the workshop, send that up in the beginning of the workshop. You might need to send it again later on as well. If there are sample files that people will be using, you might consider uploading those as you need them. If you do them all at one time, sometimes they're slow to upload, and also people lose them, and you want to see a bunch of yuck happen. Upload a zip file to people and watch when 3 or 4 people don't know how to open a zip. You know what I mean? All right. So the chat window can be used both for chatting and for interaction. Use it a lot, back and forth. People like that stuff. It's just kind of fun. Take a minute to go play with the chat window. Make sure you can send a private chat, put it back, upload something, make it work. A couple of other little features here. Down at the bottom, you've got reactions. Reactions are like, hey, what's up? You get a thumbs up or a clap. So like, happy birthday to me. You notice that the thumbs up or the clap only shows up for a little bit there, and you don't always see everybody's picture either, depending on how many people you've got. So you can't really rely on it for good communication, but it is kind of fun. If you're a student, you also get the ability when you open that thing up, there's one for like a raised hand about calling on me. Again, it's really easy to miss, so let students know if they've got a question to please go ahead and... So you might remember that the big 4 impactful things when we're doing remote training are working with your camera, get it on, look right into it, really use it, getting them to turn their camera on, calling on people for engagement, and then breakout rooms. So if earlier you were like, what the heck is a breakout room? Well then, here we go. It's not a difficult thing to play with and is probably the most important thing to become astute with while leading workshops in Zoom. Basically what we're doing is putting people into individual rooms so that they work with each other. Now this is really important even if you don't normally do this type of thing, because being in an online workshop can be really isolating. And so when we make it personal, it really wakes it up. You watch people come back with a glow in their eyes. And so build it into your online teaching repertoire at all times. You're going to want to use breakout rooms as much as possible. Right? Anytime that you can consider getting people to talk to each other or work in small groups or come up with something, throw them into breakout rooms, give them a thing to do, and let them come back. Watch how it works. Now, there are a couple of things that are important. One is introducing what a breakout room even is. If you say, I'm going to put you guys into breakout rooms, go, it gets a little messy, right? So what you might consider doing is tying it to things that we know about in real life. Like in real life, if we're all in a classroom, we could split up into groups, have a discussion, and then come back, right? And so that's what we'll be doing here. I'll split you guys up into groups. They're like, oh, okay, I get it, right? When you originally put people in groups, if it's manageable, tell people who's going to be in their group, right? Because people like to have some sort of structure to their lives, don't they? It is important that they won't see you and they won't see your slide deck or anything that you've presented either, right? So if they're going to need to follow steps or go through some sort of exercise, get them to write it down. Say, hey guys, write this down, because nobody remembers that stuff. It's really weird, but they don't, right? So here's the way breakout rooms work. You've got your little button down at the bottom talking about breakout rooms. You give that a click. What's cool is you tell it how many rooms and it'll tell you down here how many people will be automatically assigned to the rooms. So it'll do the math for you. So if math was never your jam, then cool. This is especially important when there's like 22 people in the room or something like that, and you're trying to wiggle around how many people you get in the rooms. Now it doesn't include you normally, so I'm going to have 2 rooms, which will have 1 to 2 participants per room. Now, normally it wouldn't make sense to put one person in a room by themselves, right? It's just for demo purposes. That's what we've got going here. Usually you're going to want to have at least 2 people in the room. Unless you want to go around putting people in there manually like everybody, which you don't, leave it on automatic and click Create Rooms. Now you notice in Breakout Room here, we've got Cindy and Jeff. In Breakout Room 2, we've got Liz. Right. If I thought that Jeff would be better with Liz, I can move Jeff by clicking Move To and stick him in Room 2. I can also exchange Liz with maybe Cindy, right? And so that pops around like that. I can rename the breakout rooms, but I mean, people know what a breakout room is because you just told them. Now this part is important. Down at the bottom here, you've got options. You can move people into the breakout rooms automatically, which is the way I like to do it. If you don't check that, they're going to get a little pop-up talking about join the room. All right? Some people like that, and as teachers, some people like that because you can tell who's moved away from their desk because they never joined the rooms. Right? You don't really need to allow the breakout rooms to close after a certain amount of minutes. You'll close them yourself. What is important is there's no timer or anything in there. And so what we do here is we say, hey, let's set a countdown timer to 60 seconds or so. And we let people know that in the last 60 seconds, they'll get a 60-second countdown that lets them know the breakout room is about to end. When you put people in breakout rooms, you might consider having a discussion about inclusivity, right? Let's make sure that everybody gets a chance to talk. For the people who can just talk for 4 minutes, they're going to have to be aware of that, right? Cognizant of that, and make sure that everybody gets a chance. Right, so we all get the chance to play that leader where we say, what about you, Jeff? We haven't heard from you. What do you think? You know what I mean? Now, when I hit open all rooms, we've got not joined and not joined and not joined. Right? Remember, I've got people working here on minimized rooms. Right, so this, for example, is I think what Jeff is seeing. He's seeing me talking, lucky Jeff, and he gets the chance to join the breakout room. So if I hit join, it says, hey, it's joining the room. It might take a second or here. They get stuck in the room. They can share their screen. They can see whoever they're joined with. It looks who joined here. Oh, it actually hasn't updated here yet. It's probably because I'm working with these incognito windows. Usually it does say who's joined. And maybe we will go see this person. Let's get this person to join. There we go. So now we're starting to show that it's joined. We can assign people to different rooms if we like. Now when people join those rooms, down at the bottom, one of the choices that they get is to ask for help. Now, when they click ask for help, what actually happens is you get an invitation, you, the host, get an invitation to join them. You can join a room, right? If you roll over a room, notice you've got join up here. It's kind of creepy for people when you pop in and go, hey guys, what's going on in here, right? So leave them alone. Let them have that transparency within themselves and also the isolation away from you. It's kind of a nice way to go. So what I do is I tell people, hey, if you get stuck in a room with people who aren't participating or maybe away from their desk, click that help button down at the bottom and I'll reassign you to a different room. So for example, if Liz requested help, I'd say, hey, Liz, move to breakout room 2. Now, when you put people in a room, tell them how long they'll be in there. And because there's no timer, you can broadcast a message to everybody to say, hey, here's how much time you have left. Right, so if I pop in there and say 2 minutes, like nya, when I hit broadcast, this is what they see. It says, hey, David, the facilitator, is sending to everybody. It says 2 minutes, and it stays up there for 15 seconds or so. When you close the rooms, remember we had it set here so that it would be a 60-second countdown. When you close the rooms, it says 59 seconds here, and then they also get a message popping up saying that there's 60 seconds. Now they do have an option to return to the room. So the first time that you do this, about half of the people end up kind of returning to the room, and you go, hey, people are still talking and we'll see you guys in 60 seconds or so. And then next time, usually they stay in the room the whole time. All right, so I'm going to return people to the main session. Here comes Jeff and all these folks, and normally they'll join up there. Okay, so again, really for real, the breakout sessions are the most important thing that you can do to build engagement and to get people talking to each other and to increase their experience with an online class and an online interaction. Use the heck out of them, more than you normally would. Get people talking to each other. All right, so you're going to want to practice with these bad boys. This is where you might make sure that you've got a couple of incognito windows open and you've joined your own Zoom. You can go get your own Zoom account. It's free, so you have no excuse not to practice. Please practice. Send some people in breakout rooms, play around with them, envision when you might use them, and then get ready to be awesome. Now, of course, starting the workshop the right way can make a massive difference, right? Normally, it's not the world's best idea to put a document up on the screen and then slowly go through it with people. So, you know, it's kind of ironic that that's about what I'm going to do right here. I want to make it clear that you guys have this document available to you in the link that you received or in a downloadable area within this video here, like down in the comments or in the upper right-hand corner, depending on how you're watching this video right now. Right, so when you're starting, what's important is that you stop screen share right when you start and get right on the camera. Hook the audience before you start going through, like, here's the agenda. Tell them a story, tell them why they're here today, do something inspirational, get them. Research shows you've got about 20 seconds, 20, to make a good first impression. And if you use your 20 seconds by going, hi, my name is David Lieberman, and today we'll be using Zoom and going through things like this, and let me slowly read you a slide. You know what I'm talking about? Right? So hook them. Introduce the technology like it's exciting, and let them know right away that they're going to need to turn their camera on in a couple of minutes. Get them prepared so they're not surprised for that. Tell them to stay engaged and let them know that you might call on them. Right? Let them know they can change their names, because I don't know why people love to join with that nickname or J-Lo or 817976. So show them how they can change that and kind of allude to some of the interactive features that we'll use. Tell them we'll use interactive features, it'll be exciting and all that kind of good business. And if you're going to upload sample files or a manual or something like that, now's a pretty good time to do it. Now you are going to have to show people how to change from the speaker mode to the Brady Bunch mode, or the gallery view is its actual real name, up in the corner. So now's a good time to do that. And here's what's double important. Don't skip icebreakers or introductions. You probably don't want to call them icebreakers unless you want to watch people rolling their eyes. That kind of stuff matters even more when we're connecting online because we're separated by distance. So let's put us back together as people, right? Now, the way to do that, if you want to be slick about it, is you look through the attendees list, right? The managed participants list. You look at the first person and you ask them to go first. If their name is Jeff, you say, hey, Jeff, you're up. Can you turn on your video and introduce yourself? Or whatever other little cool thing that you're doing to get people going, right? That's the time that you get them to introduce and turn on their video. You notice that I didn't say turn on your video if you have it or if you feel like it or anything like that. Get them moving. Get them to turn that thing on. All right, it's one of the biggest impactful things that you can do as you're going. Once you roll, then you're ready to roll. Right? My recommendation to you is the first, 20 times that you do something like this, bring this document up on the screen and you can kind of just go through it one by one to make sure that we get things done and we don't forget. So for example, now that I'm looking at it, I noticed that I skipped testing the chat window, right? So what we might do while we're introducing is say, hey, everybody, today you're going to need to write things down. So you can use a piece of paper or you can use a Word doc or whatever it is that you do. In the chat window right now, let's get in the chat and tell me what you're going to use to write on. Right? You watch people say MS Word and all that business. Make sure they can use the chat. Tell them they might have to wiggle their mouse around if they don't seem like they know how to use it. So make sure that you walk people through the technology before you start, when you start, and make sure you don't start with the technology. Start with a hook. Get them. Right? Once you've got them, now you can talk about things that are more boring and they'll stay here with you because they've got the promise of awesomeness. Well, thank you for sticking with us, right? I hope you've enjoyed our training about how to use Zoom technically and also how to be awesome at it, right? We do lose things over remote training, so let's do our best as teachers to put that back in. Please practice. You want to be really comfy with this stuff before you put it in front of students for the first time, right? And then reach out to your administrator and tell them I'm good to go. People love to hear that stuff. If you have questions, you can reach out to me. I'm David Lieberman for Learn It. Hope to see you soon.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget we also offer live classes in Office applications, professional development, and private training. Visit learnit.com for more details. Please remember to like and subscribe and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for choosing Learn It.